Hello viewers, this is Numera TV and you're watching Perspectives with me, MARYAM Olugbote. Nigeria's lawmakers have done something unexpected, donating 705 million naira to support President Bola Tinubu's humanitarian programs for vulnerable Nigerians. That is half of their salaries for 6 months. Sounds noble, right? But here is the real question. Is this an act of selflessness, or is it a distraction from Nigeria's worsening economic crisis? Because let's be honest, Nigeria is struggling. Inflation is skyrocketing, food prices are unaffordable, and millions are living in extreme poverty. In the midst of all of this, lawmakers, often criticized for the exorbitant salaries and perks, have now presented themselves as the champions of the people. So let's break it down. What exactly is this money for? Does this change anything for ordinary Nigerians? And will the politicians calling for sacrifice actually sacrifice their luxury lifestyles? The World Health Organization (WHO) has sounded the alarm. Millions of people in Nigeria, Kenya, and 6 other nations are at risk of losing access to life-saving HIV medication. The culprit, a dangerous mix of international politics, supply chain failures, and government inaction. This isn't just a supply issue. This is a looming catastrophe. The break in HIV treatment doesn't just mean missing a few doses. It means drug resistance, weakened immune systems, and in the worst cases, death. And yet, the world is watching in silence. It took just one phone call. Donald Trump dived Vladimir Putin, and Russia suddenly decided to pause attacks on Ukraine's power infrastructure. It sounds like a breakthrough, but is it really? Let's be clear, this is not a ceasefire. This is not the beginning of peace. This is a 30-day tactical timeout. No more strikes in power plants, bridges, or transport networks for now. But what happens after those 30 days? No one knows. And that's exactly the problem. All of this and more coming, but first the news headline. $705 million donation, selfless sacrifice or political performance. Nigeria and Kenya face HIV drug shortage. Russia eats pause on Ukraine's energy grid. Prince Harry's US visa scandal, with Trump administration take action. Gaza burns again. UK welfare overhaul. Who wins? Who loses? Now to the news in detail. $705 million donation, selfless sacrifice or political performance. The donation was announced during an iftar dinner at the presidential villa in Abuja, with House Speaker Tajudeen Abbas leading the charge. Said the lawmakers wanted to support President Tinubu's commitment to social welfare. Let's pause here.
Show our concern to the entire people of Nigeria that the predicament they were in, we also felt it. And because of that, we took a resolution that from July 2024 to December 2024, we will sacrifice 50% of our basic salaries, so that we will now set that money aside and contribute and donate to you, so that you can also use it to look at the targeted areas in Nigeria where we have vulnerable people who are in need of food, shelter, accommodation, clothing, and what have you. We leave it to you to decide on where you want to intervene.
Lawmakers make millions in salaries and allowances, and yet it has taken this long for them to publicly part with even a fraction of their earnings. Nigeria is facing its worst cost of living crisis in decades. Inflation is at a staggering 31.7%. The naira is in free fall, losing value against the dollar. Fuel prices have doubled since Tinubu ended the subsidy. Over 133 million Nigerians are in multi-dimensional poverty. Now, let's put 705 million in perspective. 705 million. That's close to 480,000 US dollars. Compare that to what these lawmakers actually earn. They reportedly earn over 13 million naira in basic salary per month. On top of that, they receive running costs, which can total hundreds of millions per year. So here is the question. If these lawmakers are really serious about sacrifice, why not cut their salaries permanently? And even if this 705 million is used well, how far can it really go? Let's do the math. You divide it among Nigeria's poorest 10 million people. That is just 17 naira per person. That can barely buy a loaf of bread in today's economy. So does this donation actually change anything? Vice President Kashim Shettima praised the lawmakers, calling the donation an act of responsible leadership. He said, leadership is about sacrifice. The greatness of a nation is built on what its leaders are willing to give, not what they take. That is a nice sentiment, but here is a reality check. The Nigerian political class is one of the highest paid in the world. Let's compare. A Nigerian senator earns more than a US senator. Nigerian lawmakers make more than UK MPs, despite Nigeria having a much weaker economy. So if leadership is about sacrifice, why aren't these politicians giving up their multi-million naira luxury convoys, travel allowances, and lavish perks? Wouldn't that be a more meaningful act of leadership? President Tinubu thanked the lawmakers, calling this a testament to national unity. He promised that the funds will go directly to programs supporting the poor, and emphasizing that his government is committed to long-term economic reforms. But here is the issue. Tinubu's economic policies, removal of subsidies, currency devaluation, and high taxation have made life harder for millions. Yes, the administration is pushing social welfare programs, but those programs are often small and inconsistently implemented. The response from Nigerians mixed. Some say it's a step in the right direction, others see this as a cheap publicity stunt. Social media reactions have been blunt. Let them donate the full allowances, not just their salaries. This is an insult. They live in mansions where we struggle to eat. What happened to all the other money meant for social programs? Where is accountability? And that last question is key. Where does Nigeria's money go? Nigeria has a massive national budget. The real question isn't a lack of funds. It's corruption, wasteful spending, and poor economic management. So, would this be a one-time gesture or the start of long-term change? Will Nigerian politicians continue to donate a portion of their salaries? Will lawmakers push for policies that actually fix the economy? Because let's be clear, a single donation won't solve Nigeria's problems. Real leadership means cutting wasteful government spending, ensuring economic policies actually benefit ordinary people, holding corrupt officials accountable. So what do you think? Is this a genuine effort to help Nigeria's poor, or just another attempt at political theater? Moving on, Nigeria and Kenya face HIV drug shortage, a preventable crisis, or a death sentence. Let's start with the facts. According to the WHO, 8 countries, including Nigeria, Kenya, Lesotho, South Sudan, Burkina Faso, Mali, Haiti, and Ukraine, are running dangerously low on HIV drugs. The reason first, US foreign aid cuts. The Trump administration has fast funding for international aid programs, including those supporting HIV treatment in developing nations. Second is supply chain disruption.
It has become difficult to access antiretroviral drugs. Local health clinics and dispensaries have been rationing the medication supply. People like 50-year-old Alice Okwiri are now limited to a 1-month supply.
I'm always stressed up because if the USAID stops this funding on us on these HIV drugs, what will I do? What will happen? So that is my stress and that is my pressure with my girl. Yeah, even my other girls, they tell me, Mom, we really pray for you, but we know you are going to be strong. So I told them, yeah, you just tell them by your mouth, but inside, deeply in my heart, it's too heavy for me to pour it out on them that I don't see a life.
Global pharmaceutical supply chains are still reeling from pandemic-related shutdowns. And now, manufacturers cannot produce or ship enough antiretroviral drugs to meet demand. Third is over-reliance on donor funding. Many African nations have underfunded domestic health programs, relying almost entirely on Western aid. With the US pulling back, these programs are collapsing. The result, people who depend on HIV treatment to stay alive are being told there is nothing left for them. This crisis isn't abstract, it is happening now. Nigeria has over 1.5 million people on HIV treatment. If the supply chain fails, they face the terrifying possibility of viral rebound, drug resistance, and even death. Kenya has made massive progress in the fight against HIV, thanks to international support. Kenya's HIV prevalence has dropped significantly over the last 2 decades. But without ARV drugs, all that progress could be raised overnight. Doctors in Kenya have already reported patients rationing their medication, taking half doses in a desperate attempt to stretch their supply. In Nigeria, some clinics have stopped accepting new HIV patients altogether. For those affected, the message is clear. There is no backup plan. Let's be clear, running out of HIV medication isn't just an inconvenience. It is a death sentence. Here's what happens when people stop taking ARV drugs. First, HIV becomes resistant to treatment. Once a person develops drug resistance, standard medication stops working. This means more expensive, harder to access treatment will be needed, if they're even available. Second, the immune system collapses. Without ARVs, HIV progresses to AIDS, leaving people vulnerable to infections and diseases that their bodies can no longer fight off. Third, transmission rates skyrocket. HIV-positive individuals who aren't on treatment have a much higher chance of passing the virus to others. A study by the WHO warns that a 6-month disruption in HIV treatment could lead to over 10 million new infections and 3 million deaths worldwide. And yet, despite these risks, the world remains silent. A major factor behind this crisis is the sudden freeze on US foreign aid. The Trump administration has altered billions in international assistance, citing a strategic review of foreign spending. But let's call it what it is: a policy gamble with millions of lives at stake. For years, US aid has been the backbone of global HIV treatment programs. Organizations like PEPFAR, President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, have poured billions into Africa's fight against HIV. But now, with funding in limbo, the impact is immediate and devastating. Let's not pretend this is just an American problem. African governments also bear responsibility. Why are Nigeria and Kenya so dependent on foreign aid for essential medicines? Why have these countries failed to build self-sufficient health systems? Here is the urgency from African leaders to find alternative solutions. The truth is, while donor funding has been a lifeline, it has also created a dangerous dependency. Now that the US is pulling back, there is no plan B. The WHO has given a warning. Unless immediate action is taken, HIV drug supplies in these countries could be completely depleted within the next 2 months. Here's what needs to happen. The US must unfreeze critical HIV funding to ensure supplies reach the people who need them most. Pharmaceutical companies must ramp up production and prioritize deliveries to high-risk nations. African governments must step up, allocate emergency funding, and invest in long-term solutions instead of relying on international aid forever. This crisis is not an accident. It is a failure of leadership. This crisis should be a wake-up call. If the world allows millions of people to be cut off from life-saving treatments, What does that say about a commitment to global health? Will the world watch as HIV makes a comeback? Will African nations finally take control of their healthcare systems? Will the West continue to dictate who lives and who dies based on politics? Right now, millions of people in Nigeria, Kenya, and beyond are waiting for answers, but time is running out. Moving on, Trump calls Putin. Russia hits pause on Ukraine's energy grid. We started with a high-stakes phone call between Trump and Putin. Details of the conversation are vague, but here is what we do know. They spoke for over an hour about the war in Ukraine, economic sanctions, and possible solutions. Putin agreed to pause attacks on Ukraine's critical infrastructure. Trump called it a big win and claimed the conversation was very productive. The Kremlin framed it as a test. If the US and NATO continue sending weapons to Ukraine, Russia might resume its attacks. The last point is key. Russia is not offering peace. Russia is making demands. The message is clear: stop arming Ukraine, or the bombs will start falling again. You've seen this before. Russia doesn't do ceasefires, it does strategic pauses. This isn't a shift in policy, it is a calculated move. Think back to previous Russian war tactics. In 2022, after failing to take Kyiv, Russia withdrew and rearmed. A month later, it launched a massive offensive in Donbass. In 2023, Putin pretended to entertain peace talks while quietly mobilizing 300,000 more troops. In 2024, Russia announced a pause in drone strikes right before unleashing its heaviest missile attacks in months. So, does this sound like a new era of peace, or does it sound like history repeating itself? Ukrainian officials aren't buying it. A spokesperson for President Zelensky summed it up bluntly. Russia pauses when it is weak. Russia attacks when it is ready. Let's talk about why this is happening now. Why did Putin agree to a 30-day pause? What does Russia gain from this? Russia is running low on precision missiles. Recent intelligence reports indicate that Russia's stockpiles are dwindling. Western sanctions have made it harder to replace them. Ukraine's counter-offensive is making gains, Russian forces are spread thin, and they need time to regroup. Putin wants to test Trump's influence. Can Trump convince NATO to slow down military aid? If he can, it's a win for Russia. It is a political distraction. By pausing attacks, Russia gets to look reasonable while preparing its next move. This is not about goodwill. This is about military strategy. Donald Trump is celebrating this as a victory. He says it's a sign that diplomacy works. But let's break it down. Putin did not agree to ceasefire. He did not agree to withdraw troops. He did not promise peace. What did Trump really get? A 30-day timeout. That's it. Meanwhile, Russian forces are still occupying Ukrainian territory, still violating international law, and still keeping the war machine running. If Trump starts pressuring NATO to reduce military aid to Ukraine, Russia wins without firing another missile. If European leaders hesitate, if weapons shipments slow down, Russia gets the breathing room it needs to launch its next offensive. This pause could lead to three possible scenarios. First is a real chance diplomacy if Trump can convince NATO to reconsider its support, which Ukraine won't like. Second, a classic Russian deception. Russia uses the time to resupply and then strikes harder than before. Third is the more Western hesitation. If Europe sees this as a de-escalation and starts second-guessing its support for Ukraine, so should the world be celebrating? Not yet. Ukraine is still in danger. The war is far from over. A pause is not peace. A phone call isn't a solution. And a dictator's word is not a guarantee. For now, the clock is ticking. 30 days. That's all we have to find out if this is the beginning of peace or just another Russian ploy? Moving on, Prince Harry's US visa scandal. Will Trump's administration take action? Prince Harry's immigration records are about to be made public, and it could spell trouble for the Duke of Sussex. The question everyone is asking, did Prince Harry lie in a US visa application about past drug use? The Trump administration has authorized the release of redacted visa documents following a legal challenge by the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank. The argument, if Prince Harry was dishonest, he should face consequences, just like any other visa applicant.
President Trump is being urged to investigate the British prince turned Californian's immigration records. That's because the British prince may have lied about his past drug use when emigrating from the United Kingdom. You see, Prince Harry is in the United States on an A1 visa, which is given to heads of states and has far lower security and background checks compared to other visas. But to get the visa, Prince Harry lied on his application status when asked about drug use. He himself spilled the tea when he spoke about consuming cocaine, cannabis and psychedelic mushrooms in his 2023 memoir, Spare. Applications for visa-based entry into the United States undergo a lot of scrutiny. Any drug use history is grounds for an automatic rejection.
This could turn into a major international controversy. Will Prince Harry's immigration status be at risk? Could the Trump White House revoke his visa? Let's break it down. Why is the US government releasing Prince Harry's immigration records? This was started with Harry's own confession. In his 2023 memo Spare, he admitted to using cocaine, marijuana, and psychedelic drugs in the past. That's a big problem. US immigration law is clear. Past drug use can be grounds for visa denial. Lying on a visa application is cause for revocation or deportation. So, the real issue is this. Did Prince Harry disclose his drug use when applying for a US visa, or was he granted special treatment? The Heritage Foundation demanded answers, filing a Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, request to the Department of Homeland Security, DHS. Initially, DHS refused to release the records, citing privacy concerns. But now, under Trump's administration, a federal judge has ruled that the documents must be made public. Could Prince Harry be deported? Legally speaking, yes. Lying on a visa application is a serious offense. Even admitting to drug use could be enough for visa cancellation. The Trump administration has taken a hardline stance on immigration. But would that actually happen? The deportation. Many legal experts believe that Prince Harry is unlikely to face deportation, not because he didn't break the rules, but because he's a high-profile figure. Some analysts suggest that Harry may have been granted an A1 visa, which is usually reserved for diplomats and VIPs. If that is true, drug use admissions might not even matter, but that raises another issue. Did the Biden-era DHS grant Harry special treatment? Did he bypass rules that apply to ordinary people? Now that Trump is back in charge, things could get interesting. His administration has already shown a zero-tolerance approach to illegal immigration and visa fraud. Will Prince Harry be held accountable? Trump himself has hinted at taking action. In a recent interview, he was asked about Prince Harry's visa situation. If he lied, there should be consequences. I personally wouldn't want to see him deported, but the law is the law. Let's not forget. Trump has never been a fan of Meghan and Harry. He has previously criticized them for disrespecting the late Queen Elizabeth and interfering in the US politics. If the visa records reveal any dishonesty, Trump's administration will have to decide. Will they let it slide or set an example? The British royal family is staying silent. No comments from King Charles, Prince William, or any senior royals. But behind the scenes, this is a major diplomatic headache. If Prince Harry's visa becomes a full-blown scandal, it could affect US-UK relations. The British government may have to intervene behind the scenes to prevent a fallout. So what happens next? If discrepancies are found, Trump's administration will have to decide on next steps. If Republicans push for action, Harry could face visa restrictions. A legal challenge from Harry's team is possible. One thing is clear, Trump's America isn't Biden's America. Under Biden, Prince Harry might have expected leniency. Under Trump, things could take a very different turn. Moving on, Gaza burns again. Gaza is under siege again. In one of the deadliest escalations in recent memory, Israeli airstrikes have killed more than 400 people in a matter of hours. Entire neighborhoods have been flattened. Rescue operations are failing. And whatever was left of the ceasefire is now in ruins. This is not just another round of conflict. This is a full-scale military offensive, and the Israeli government is making it clear. This war is far from over. This escalation comes after weeks of failed negotiations between Israel and Hamas. According to Tel Aviv, Hamas refused to release hostages held in Gaza. The Israeli government says this left them with no choice but to act. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that Israel will continue striking Gaza until Hamas is eliminated. Hamas, on the other hand, has a different version of events. The group claims Israel sabotaged diplomatic efforts and launched its offensive despite ongoing talks. And now, Hamas is warning that Israeli hostages still in Gaza may not survive if the strikes continue. Let's talk about the situation on ground. It's nothing short of catastrophic. Entire families buried under rubble, rescue teams can't reach them. Hospitals are collapsing, there are too many casualties, too few resources. Power is gone, what is running out, and food supplies are dwindling. Medical professionals say they can't even administer basic treatment. There is no electricity in many hospitals, and doctors are performing surgeries without anesthesia. Let's not forget, most of those killed are civilians. Women and children are among the dead. Many were inside their homes when the bombs started falling. The world is watching. The United Nations has condemned the silence. France, Turkey, and Egypt have denounced the strikes. Protests have erupted in multiple countries demanding an end to the attacks. And yet, as always, nothing is changing. The Trump administration has backed Israel's right to self-defense. Washington says Hamas must bear the consequences for refusing to cooperate. Meanwhile, the fate of Israeli hostages remain uncertain. The families are desperate. They had urged Netanyahu not to launch another military offensive, fearing to put their loved ones in greater danger. Now, the worst fears may be coming true. Hamas has hinted that some hostages may not survive Israel's latest airstrikes, and yet Israel is pushing forward. There are only two possibilities. Diplomatic pressure forces both sides to back down. The war escalates into something far worse. Right now, escalation seems inevitable. The ceasefire is dead. Israel is doubling down. Hamas is vowing revenge. Civilians are caught in the crossfire. And as history has shown, this war will not end anytime soon. The question is, how much worse will it get? Moving on. UK welfare overhaul. Who wins? Who loses? The United Nations is rolling out its most significant welfare reform in decades, and it's not pretty. The government has announced sweeping cuts to disability benefits, changes to universal credit, and a complete overhaul of unemployment support. The official line, Britain can't afford its welfare bill anymore. But there is a problem. 1 million people could lose their benefits. Disability rights groups are calling this a humanitarian crisis. And opposition leaders say the government is launching an economic war against the vulnerable. So what exactly is changing? Who gets hit the hardest?
Thousands of PIP claimants need to take action ahead of these updates, and we're going to break it all down for you in detail. If you or someone you know relies on PIP, this is vital information that could affect your payments, eligibility, and future assessments. Let's get into it.
And what does this mean for Britain's struggling households? First, disability benefit, 1 million to lose support. The UK's Personal Independence Payment, PIP, has been a lifeline for people with disabilities. But under the new rules, that lifeline is being cut. New eligibility rules will tighten access. 1 million people could lose their disability benefit. Government says PIP costs have soared by €20 billion since the pandemic and need to be controlled. The government is justifying this by saying that too many people are claiming disability benefits instead of working. Critics, however, argue that these changes punish the disabled for a government budgeting problem. Second, universal credit, a harder road for young claimants. Universal credit, you see, the UK's primary welfare payment will technically rise above inflation, but don't be fooled. The fine print tells a different story. Young people under 22 with health conditions will lose extra support. New applicants deemed unable to work will receive low financial assistance. Sanctions will increase for those who fail to meet work search conditions. The message is clear. The government wants people to work, even if they are sick. The Work Capability Assessment, gone by 2028. The Work Capability Assessment, WCA, the test that determines if someone is too ill to work, is being scrapped. Instead of WCA, benefits will be based entirely on PIP assessment. This means that if someone doesn't qualify for PIP, they won't get other disability-related benefits either. The government says this change will reduce fraud and make the system more efficient, but disability advocates argue it will leave thousands without support. What is unemployment insurance? Unemployment benefits are being rebranded. The government is introducing a new scheme called unemployment insurance, replacing job seekers allowance and employment and support allowance. ESA, the idea is a simpler, streamlined approach to unemployment support. In reality, many worry it will just mean fewer people qualify for help. Unemployment experts say this could lead to harsher restrictions and more people falling through the cracks. The government says Britain can't afford its welfare bill. The UK is facing a €9.9 billion budget shortfall. Spending on disability benefits has skyrocketed post-pandemic. Ministers argue that the system needs reform to encourage more people into work. Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall insists these measures are about fairness, ensuring only those who truly need support get it. But critics say this is austerity in disguise. Not surprisingly, the reforms have triggered fury across the UK. Disability charities call it a direct attack on disabled people. Trade unions warn of mass job insecurity and a rise in poverty. Opposition leaders accuse the government of shifting the financial crisis onto the poorest households. Many are questioning whether these cuts are truly about cost saving or whether they are part of a wider ideological push to reduce government support altogether. Britain's welfare shakeup is making global headlines. European leaders are watching closely. Countries like France and Germany also struggle with soaring welfare costs, and some analysts believe the UK's approach could inspire similar cuts elsewhere. So what happens next? The changes are set to roll out over the next 3 years, but legal challenges are already underway. Disability rights groups are preparing lawsuits. For now, one thing is clear. Millions of Britons are about to feel the impact of this welfare overhaul. The question is, who will survive it? Before I go, once again, the news headline. $705 million donation. Self-sacrifice of political performance. Nigeria and Kenya face HIV drug shortage. Russia eats pause on Ukraine's energy grid. Prince Harry's US visa scandal. Will Trump's administration take action? Gaza burns again. UK welfare overhaul. EU wins, EU loses. Thanks for staying tuned. Once again, I'm MARYAM Olugbote.